Good evening. I'm here to talk to you about the most unnecessary things in the world. Well, that is as far as everyone else is concerned. In my personal opinion, these things that I'm about to talk about are some of the most relative things in the world. They're the things that people take for granted. They're the things that people think or believe that are not all that important. But the truth of the matter, it's of grave importance. I'm talking about how we treat each other. Excuse me, while I smoke on this topic. It's not a peace pipe. It's the unnecessary addiction to tobacco that I have. Now, some of y'all probably think this is a blunt or something like that. Shame on you. I'm a former musician who uses a plug to smoke my cigars so I don't get my fingers covered in tar. Anyways, to the point I was referring to, too often I hear people talk to each other and they smile and grin and pretend to be friendly. It's a shame that in this world today, 90% of the people out there are fake. I'm not saying that they attempt to be fake or they're trying to deceive anyone. It's just that instead of being who they really are, they try to conform to the attitude, the way they carry themselves, the way they respond to certain topics and subjects. They just all want to fit in, so they basically all act the same. It's called politically correctness. Well, to some degree. Most people have no longer an opinion of their own. I mean, everyone's got an opinion. You know what they say? They're like assholes. Everyone has one. But their actual opinions, for the most part, are based off of someone else's popular belief in most cases. So, bottom line is, the reason I'm here to talk to you today is I had an extremely long conversation with our Lord and Savior. Before any of you good things start thinking that I'm a religious buff or anything, I'm not. But I do think sometimes that I'm more religious than even the preachers you see on TV. They do a lot of talking, not so much walking. Every day, well, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not every day, but a lot of days, I'll talk to God. Now, no, He doesn't respond to me with words. He responds to me with feelings of grandeur, peace, anger, the feeling of doing wrong. These emotions that we feel are exactly how God talks to all of us all the time. Most of us choose not to listen. Whenever you do something and you feel yourself, hope no one's looking. God's always looking. That little feeling that you got that maybe you should be careful is God saying, don't do that. When you feel good about something, like maybe you help somebody unlock their car or change a tire, that feeling of doing something great, that's God patting you on your back. Okay, so enough about God for now. No, He's all powerful and He's always watching. I'm not a believer. I don't believe in God. I've almost died 9 different times, and I can't explain it any other way than I've literally seen the laws of physics be broken. Very much into physics. And I know when I see something that shouldn't be. Well, in a couple of occasions, you can contribute some to coincidence, but some of the ones, like, I'll give you an example of the laws of physics that got broke, and the chills ran through my body the minute I realized what was happening was not physically possible. Those chills were God saying, "Yeah, buddy, I got you. Don't worry." I'll give you an example. I used to have a big four-wheel drive that I would often get pulled over because the officers would want to measure the ground to my headlights because that's how they determine if your truck's too tall to be on the road. Of course, my wise ass put my headlights on the bottom of my bumper, so I got those extra 12 or so inches. So anyways, one day I was getting pulled over, began to measure my height to the ground, to the headlights, and while being pulled over, I was in the far left lane, about 4 lanes from the feeder road, the shoulder on the right, and while I was changing lanes, a guy pulled out in front of me. I guess he was in a hurry, passing me, and then changed lanes past me into the lane I just left. Of course, the police officer that was pulling me over was still in that lane. So the guy immediately jumped back in front of me and hit his brakes because, he was speeding or what have you. When he did that, my four-wheel drive basically crawled on top of his car a little bit. The hook went right through his trunk, my bottom tow hook on the bottom of my bumper. So there was an accident while I was getting pulled over. Now, of course, the police officer was right there. He seen the whole thing, so I didn't get no ticket or anything for the accident. But to get to the point of the physics being broken, when I finally stopped, well, let me say this first. This four-wheel drive was tall. And so if I ever locked my brakes up really hard, it would jerk the drive shaft right out of the rear end, and I'd have to dismantle the U-joints to dismount my drive shaft to stick it back in the yoke and then put the U-joints back on. Well, when this happened, when this accident happened, I had to lock my brakes really hard. So, of course, my drive shaft popped out. Of course, I was still rolling. I got over to the shoulder, and I was kind of freaked out for the instance. And for the moment, I forgot all about my truck not having a parking brake. I literally had to put it in first gear to have a park to where it wouldn't roll away. I'd actually been at a local park one time where I had the truck in neutral and I stepped out to talk to someone and my truck started rolling away with a light breeze. It had big tires and it rolled easy. So it didn't take much for it to roll at all. Well, when the officer came up to me, of course I still had my foot on the brake or what have you, and he asked, about how tall my truck was and went through the process of measuring it. And, of course, I met the legal limit. I put my headlights on the bottom of my bumper just for that purpose. But I told him that my drive shaft had popped out and I need to put it back in. And he told me to go ahead. So I crawl up underneath my truck. That was easy to crawl up under there. I mean, I could sit up Indian style, legs crossed, and sit straight up, and I would still be underneath my truck. So while I'm putting my drive shaft back in, the cop is giving the guy that pulled out in front of me a ticket. But the police officer's parked right behind me, and the guy that pulled out in front of me was parked right in front of me. Well, I'm sitting there busy changing my drive shaft, or, putting it back in, when I realized that I was on the side of a hill. Well, I realized that when an 18-wheeler drove by and all the wind movement from the 18-wheeler made my truck blow all around. It kind of shook around a little bit. And I immediately thought, oh shit, I don't have a parking brake. I'm on the side of a hill. When I looked out, I noticed that I was at an angle. When the truck drove by, compared to the horizon of the earth, I was about, maybe 10, 15 degrees off of being level. My truck should have been rolling down the hill. I know physics. If my truck will roll on flat ground with a slight breeze on the side of a hill or, on a freeway, that sucker should have been rolling 15, 20 miles an hour backwards. It didn't. It wasn't. I had the drive shaft completely disconnected. Of course, it was that way as soon as the accident happened, on one end anyways. And I'm under there, and I had the coldest chills of my life, thinking, oh my God, what's holding my truck still? In that instance, now, excuse me, but when I speak about the Lord and how he saved me in the past, it makes me emotional. Through my life and all the other things that have happened and things I've seen, I know there's someone who's greater than I, has powers that I'll never understand, nor with CERN and all their scientists will they ever understand. Every time they break through another smaller particle and they find even more, well, those are just doors that work like dominoes. And God's always going to stack more dominoes than you can ever knock over. So there's a power out there that we may never understand. And if we ever do, it's when we become light beings ourselves. So get back to my point. I don't believe in God. I know there's a God. I feel a little bit like I'm cheating because the biggest thing about spreading the word of God is you have to believe. I don't have to believe. I know. So anyways, to get back to my point, I do a lot of thinking about the way I see people treat each other. And I'll be honest with you, I've had some really bad things happen to me. I've been screwed over by friends. I used to have 2 furniture stores. I got ripped off for a lot of money. And I'll be honest with you, I hate or anger none of these people. I'm a true believer in that whatever happens, happens for a reason. And so I have hate or anger for no one. I don't need that. Me carrying around hate or anger is them just still screwing me over, in a sense, because every moment of thought I give to hate and anger, I'm not giving thoughts to love and peace and creating a better world for myself, my children, and my fellow man. So, and women. Using the word man as the human race, human, okay? To be human, though, what does that mean? I think it means to be humane, okay? But I have some words to say on that subject, being human. You know, when I look around the world, and a lot of people have said this in different ways, but, God built a pretty perfect place here. And until the industrial age, we lived pretty close to harmony. Like back in the days when America was covered with, American Indians or Native Americans, and they lived in perfect harmony with the earth. They would pick up and move, maybe following a herd of buffalo or whatever. They followed their food sources. When they left one location, they may have left feces behind, maybe some food scraps. But these things all went back to feeding the land that they just left. One thing that people don't understand is that before us, I'm not saying before humans, but before our current age, everything was in perfect harmony. The grass that grows feeds the small animals and the cows. The wolves and bears that tear into other things, they keep a balance of the numbers of certain animals. I mean, if there was no coyotes and wolves to eat all the rabbits, well, we'd have a situation where you had to kick a rabbit just to walk down the street. So there's always a balance in nature. But to tell you the truth, human beings are the only creature on this planet, because all creatures depend and survive and consume of the earth. But all creatures give back. Now you may think, hey, that animal just ate a bunch of great vegetation and all it gave back was shit. Well, that great vegetation lives off that shit. If it weren't for that shit, the fertilizer, the plants would starve. If there's no plants, there's no small animals that eat them. If there's no small animals, there's no larger animals that eat them. If there's no larger animals, we don't eat either. Animal dies, feeds the grass. The grass feeds the cow, we eat the cow. We have feces, but we don't give it back. We send it to industrial chemical plants to bleach it, clean it, separate it, which is way better than just dumping it in the ocean or what have you, but it's not the way, because we're consuming of the earth and then never giving it back. Someone asked me, and the reason I'm having this conversation, someone asked me, my mother actually, I was talking to her about it, and you know, we're going through a hurricane right now, and so she had asked me, you know, something about death or something, and somehow the conversation left to me. I explained to her, well, I don't want to be put in a box. If I ever die, I want to be cremated and my ashes spread, you know, back across the land, because even ash will help fertilize the land. But I said if I had an ultimate choice, I'd rather be just never embalmed or anything, but maybe go dumped in the ocean and fed back to the very wildlife that we consume, because the animals I feed will feed others, either bigger fish or other animals that humans go back to eat again. It's the circle of life. So honestly, the human race is the only creature on this planet that consumes and consumes and consumes. And so with little regard to what they're consuming, they don't give none of it back. For the most part, most people embalm their bodies, turn it into like gelatin plastic or something that's not very good for the environment. And so all the animals we ate and the grass the animals ate, all that is being packed up and stored away to never be used again. You know, eventually, you know, after a couple hundred years, maybe a coffin will dissolve and there'll be a little bit of nutrients left that's not embalming fluid. And it's not enough. If you take 3 carrots, you should give 3 carrots back. So, me personally, I want to give back everything that I am. I want to be either fed to the fishes, I want to be cremated at the very least, and let my ashes feed the grasses. Because I don't want to be one of the people that consumes. I'm not saying don't consume. I'm just saying show appreciation for what you consume. And then when you don't need it anymore, please give it back. Because there'll be someone, maybe not this next generation, but the generation after, that will consume something that you helped grow. It's only fair. For millions of years, this planet's been alive, and all creatures enjoyed their life and then gave back what they took. Think of a beautiful songbird. Goes up to a grapevine, eats the grapes, seeds and all, flies over across town or across a park or across a field or some nature area, and then they defecate onto a new spot. Well, in that defecation comes a little bit of fertilizer and some great seeds. That bird, in turn, for enjoying the flavorful deliciousness of those grapes, helped that plant spread its seed. Balance. Bird gets to enjoy the greatness of the fruit, enjoys a happy, healthy life, and in return, at no charge, helps that grape vine have children and grow more grapes to feed more birds. Now, if you understand what I'm saying, we take our waste and rather than give it back, we bleach it, chemicalize it, make it unusable. And I realize that we take the water out of it and recycle it and feed it back to us. But I'll be honest with you, I'd rather have water that's been coming back through nature than any power plant. I think this is a real issue. I know that I'm not going to create no kind of change where people stop being put in boxes and embalmed. But we should consider giving back at least what we can. I know the idea of having a compost pile or something like that for your home sounds ridiculous. And it may be for population areas that are overcrowded. But that doesn't mean we can't have giant ones that handle sections of our civilization. And speaking of those lines, I'm going to jump subjects for just a second. You know, we always build our communities in the greenest and most plushest areas. And what do? We take down all this beautiful greenage and we put concrete. And we reduce the amount of greenage in the area. Well, we love the greenage. It creates a shade, nice cool breezes, oxygen from the trees and plants that are growing there. But if we're going to be pouring all that concrete, why don't we pour it in a place where there's not so much green? The minute we plumb it up with plumbing and liquid water and we start using our water sprinklers, we can maybe make that area green to a degree that increases the greenage on the earth rather than decreases the greenage on the earth. Makes no sense to take an area that's beautiful and green and turn it halfway into an area that has no greenage. Build our homes in the desert, okay? May seem tough, oh, it's so hot, whatever. Well, with a little time, a little love for the earth, a little planting this, a little planting that, bring in a little fertilizer, we can make that area green as we want. Now, that being said, people as a whole, you know, take too much for granted. And it's not that they do it on purpose. It's more along the lines that they just really don't understand. For a long time, I've been paying attention to how everything works. And fortunately, I guess, or it may be a curse, but I see things differently than most people. I realize that everything has a mechanism of operation or, it works like a machine. And if you take out part of any machine, especially let's say a cog or a gear, and that machine's not going to work anymore. I'll give you a better example. When we consume goods, food, products, or what have you, we put it in our stomach, and in our stomach there's bacteria of all kinds that help us break it down. And we literally don't live off the food, but the nutrients that these bacteria provide. For example, when you fart, that's not you farting. That's all the bacteria in your stomach digesting the food that you're eating and providing you the actual nutrients that you need that are doing all the farting and building up the gas. And, of course, it builds up inside you, so you got to let it go. But that being said, it's not really a great idea for us to continue to consume with no regard to what we're consuming or how it's to be replenished. I think this is just a personal idea. I don't know enough of the science on it to know if it would work or not. But instead of taking all the waste that we get um, from our that we pump out to the sewage plants, why don't we just clean it enough to where it's still a form of nitrogen and everything for the earth, and pump it right into the desert. Feed the land that has no nourishment to grow crops or plants or natural greenage. If we can do that, we may help replace some of the greens we've taken. We chop down the rainforest, and everybody doesn't want that. They think it contributes to global warming. But I'll have you know, and I've done a lot of looking into it, the earth goes through cycles, just like you do. You wake, you sleep, you gain a little weight, you lose a little weight. You get happy, you get sad. Well, the earth goes through cycles. And, so many people blame CO2 for creating some global warming effect. I can tell you this. If you go down to Antarctica, I don't think it hardly ever gets anywhere near above freezing. So we're not melting the ice caps. Of course, to continue packing on new snow, that kind of thing, it has to have a balance. So it's going to let some ice go to make room for new ice. So, stop worrying about global warming. It's not a real thing. Let me give you an example. The CO2 emissions that we provide in the earth is like, 8 parts per million. So imagine 1,000,000 tennis balls and 4 of them being the wrong color. Ask yourself, how's the 4 discolored tennis balls going to influence the other near million tennis balls? Basically, it's not. Before our industrial age, and we started using all these power plants and this and that, and putting such a huge amount of carbon dioxide in the air from our factories, the earth was already 4 parts per million CO2. So even though we've doubled it, it's only 8 parts per million now. It's not enough to make a difference. It's not going to melt the world. In fact, if you do a little research, you'll see that rainwater, humidity in the sky, creates way more greenhouse effect than anything else, up to, I think, 20 or 30% of the greenhouse effect. I know you don't want us to get rid of all the water. So you need to understand that CO2 thing is not creating a problem. I would still, I'm not saying we don't need to stop using so much CO2. Other energy sources that are non-polluting is always a good idea, because while I'm telling you that we should leave our feces behind for the planet and our bodies as well when we no longer need them, we shouldn't be putting stuff out there that's not natural. And CO2, while it is natural, comes out of our very breath. Burning chemicals and putting those chemical agents into the sky is a terrible thing. The radiation leak from Fukushima, the oil leaks from the platform oil rigs that are out there that every now and then have a little accident and just wipe out big chunks of clean ocean. These things are not necessary. I'm more worried about that than any CO2 output. Because when you spill oil in the ocean, it's not 4 parts per million. It's all the oil, 100% in the area that it's in contact with. Destroys wildlife, hurts our planet. So at the very least, we need to get our rigs out of the ocean. We need to figure out, if we're going to keep using fossil fuels, we need to figure out a better way to transport them than risk them, a cargo ship being overturned and spilling his payload into the ocean. There's a lot of things we can do. You know, I mean, everyone thinks, well, what can I do by myself? Well, not a lot, really. In fact, I was thinking we could get a lot more done instead of asking people to quit driving their Hummers and this and that. Just ask them to, 4 or 5 times a day, remember to walk around your house and make sure there's no extra lights on. Don't waste the energy. The less energy we need, the less fossil fuels we have to burn. And something as small as just making the extra lights are off in your house is not a big deal. It's not a big deal for any individual. It's not like you're asking them to save cans in the backyard and crush them and go recycle them. It's just make sure you're not wasting any energy. And remember, it helps you because you have less electricity bill. But it also helps us by not having to burn so much chemicals or stuff that comes from our planet. So I'll give more later on this subject, but I want you to know every little thing counts. People look at a penny and look, it's not worth nothing. But you collect enough of them, and you'd be surprised what you might be able to buy with them. God bless, and I'll talk to you again soon. And remember to love everybody, because we're all family on this planet. No matter what happens or what anyone does, think of a smaller family. There's always a bad kid in the family. Doesn't mean he hates you. Just means he's being a kid. Unfortunately, we have too many grown-up kids these days. But learn to love each other. Get rid of the hate. You have to get rid of the hate. And last but not least, but learn not to hate, because what bothers me the most about anything is people stereotype each other and hate them because of their stereotype. And to speak on that for just a moment real quickly, don't hate someone or think they're being politically incorrect, because, they may be being politically incorrect, but being politically incorrect is probably the worst thing that we can do as a society. Stereotypes don't come from a joke. I can't say that Chinese people like to jog 500 miles every day and that become like a stereotype, because it just isn't true. Stereotypes aren't made by people that are watching the people that are going to stereotype. A stereotype develops from the race or the people being known for having accelerated anything that they might be stereotyped by. So remember, stereotypes is not a bad thing. Stereotypes is just an observation of what the majority of these people do. I'll explain further later, but in the meantime, God bless. I'm very tired. It's late at night. I'll get back with you very soon. Peace. The only way you'll find it is if you provide it. The golden rule, baby.